Right now, as you are watching this, the United States military is preparing to do something that no nation has attempted alone in modern history. Force open one of the most dangerous and strategically critical waterways on the face of this earth. And they're going to do it without a single ally standing beside them. Welcome to Pulse America News. I am Kundi, and what is unfolding in the Strait of Hormuz right now is not just a military operation. It is a turning point that could reshape the global economy, redefine America's position on the world stage, and drag the entire planet into a conflict that nobody fully prepared for. Let that sink in for a moment. The United States reached out to its closest allies across the globe, NATO partners, Japan, Australia, South Korea, country after country that has stood shoulder to shoulder with America for decades. And one by one, they all said no. Germany said it plainly. Their defense minister looked at this situation and said, "This is not our war. We did not start it." Japan said they have no plans to send naval vessels anywhere near the Middle East. Australia confirmed they would not be dispatching warships. Britain's Prime Minister said clearly that his country would not be pulled into this conflict. Greece said it would not engage in any military operations in the Strait. And South Korea, perhaps the most diplomatic of all, said maybe, possibly after the fighting stops, they might consider helping in some limited way. That is not help. That is a polite rejection dressed up in careful language. And what was the American response to all of this? Earlier today, a statement came out that read, "The United States has been informed by most of our NATO allies," and the word allies was placed in quotation marks, that they do not want to get involved with our military operation against the terrorist regime of Iran. We no longer need or desire their assistance. We never did. Likewise for Japan, Australia, or South Korea. In fact, we do not need the help of anyone. That is the tone right now coming out of Washington. And while the defiance may sound strong, the reality on the ground is far more complicated and far more dangerous than any single statement can capture. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not just a body of water, it is the throat of the global economy. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through that narrow bend between Iran to the north and the Arabian Peninsula to the south. When that strait is disrupted, oil prices spike, supply chains collapse, and ordinary people in every country on earth feel the impact at the fuel pump, at the grocery store, and in the cost of everything that gets shipped anywhere. The longer it stays closed, the more pressure builds, not just on Iran, not just on the United States, but on every government, every economy, and every household connected to the global market. Now here is the part that surprised most military analysts and war game planners. Everyone knew that any major conflict with Iran would eventually center around the Strait of Hormuz. That was never in question. What almost nobody predicted was how Iran would choose to close it. The traditional assumption was mines. Iran would seed the waters with naval mines, physically blocking passage for any vessel attempting to enter. But Iran did not do that. Instead, they turned to drones. Weaponized, precise, remotely operated drones that can strike a commercial vessel from significant distance. And that changes everything. Because mines do not discriminate. If you place mines in a waterway, you block everyone, including yourself. Your own tankers cannot get out. Your own trade dies alongside your enemies. That is economic suicide, and Iran knew it. Drones, on the other hand, allow Iran to choose. They can let certain vessels through. Ships from countries they consider friendly, India and China in particular, have been allowed to pass. Everyone else, every Western-aligned commercial vessel, every tanker heading to European or American markets gets targeted or threatened until the insurance companies pull out, the shipping companies reroute, and the entire commercial flow simply stops. This is not a closed strait in the old-fashioned sense. It is something more sophisticated and in many ways more dangerous. Iran has found a way to weaponize uncertainty itself. Shipping companies do not need to see their vessels blown apart. They just need to believe it might happen tomorrow. And right now, they believe exactly that. The last confirmed strike on a commercial vessel in the Persian Gulf was 2 or 3 days ago at the time of this recording. 2 or 3 days of quiet. And yet, the ships are still not moving, because quiet is not the same as safe. Every captain, every company, every insurer is asking the same question. Will the ship that goes through today come back in one piece? And nobody can honestly answer yes. So the ships wait. And the pressure keeps building. So what does it actually take to force that strait open by military power alone? This is not a simple operation. This is not a matter of sending a few warships through, firing some warning shots and declaring victory. A retired rear admiral with deep experience in naval strategy laid out what this would genuinely require, and the picture he painted is sobering. First, you need to continue degrading everything that threatens the operation. Missiles, mines, drones, unmanned surface combatants. The strikes that have been happening across Iran are part of this process. Every launch site destroyed, every drone depot taken out, every missile battery silenced reduces the threat level by a fraction. But it does not eliminate it. That work continues around the clock. Second, you need persistent surveillance across an enormous area. Not just the strait itself, but 50 miles in every direction and 100 miles back into Iranian territory. You need an unblinking eye watching for drone launches, watching for small boat movements, watching for anything that could threaten a vessel in transit. That means unmanned aerial vehicles in the air at all times, every hour of every day, for as long as this operation continues. The resources exist, but the commitment required is immense. Third, you need 4 to 8 military aircraft overhead continuously during any convoy operation, not just watching, armed and ready. The weapon of choice here is something called the Advanced Precision Kill Weapons System, a cost-effective rocket that has proven extraordinarily effective against the type of drone Iran relies on. The logic is simple. If your surveillance detects a drone launch, your aircraft need to be close enough to intercept it before it reaches the ship, and if possible, you strike the launch site before the drone ever leaves the ground. That requires constant air presence, not occasional flyovers. Constant. On top of that, you need armed helicopters stationed nearby to deal with small boat threats along the coastline. Fast attack boats have been part of Iran's military doctrine for years. They swarm, they harass, they create chaos. Helicopters are the answer to that threat, but they have limited range, which means they need to be based on naval vessels already positioned close to the action. And then there are the destroyers. Somewhere between 10 and 14 guided missile destroyers would need to be deployed to provide the air defense umbrella that makes all of this possible. These are among the most capable surface combat ships in the world. Their job would be to make sure that anything that gets past the aircraft under surveillance does not reach the commercial vessels. They are the last layer of protection, and deploying that many destroyers to one region of the world is a massive, sustained commitment of naval power. Here is the part that does not get said enough. All of this, every aircraft, every destroyer, every surveillance drone, every helicopter, every strike mission, every convoy operation, has to continue not for a week, not for a month. This is the kind of operation that could run for years, because the threat does not go away when you push a convoy through. It resets. Iran can reload. Iran can reposition. Iran can reposition. Iran can wait, and the moment American military presence drops below the level needed to guarantee safety, the threat returns. The strait does not stay open because you opened it once. It stays open only as long as you can maintain the presence and the power to keep it open. Every single day. This is the comparison that puts it best. The Strait of Hormuz problem looks a lot like the counter-terrorism fight that consumed American military resources for more than 2 decades after the September 11 attacks. In that fight, the United States had to be right every single time. The enemy only needed to be right once. It is the same logic here. Iran does not need to sink a ship every day to keep the strait closed. They just need to succeed once every few weeks. One burning tanker on the news is enough to keep every other shipping company from taking the risk. The standard required to truly reopen this waterway to normal commercial traffic is perfection. And perfection, sustained indefinitely, is an extraordinary demand on any military force. And in the middle of all of this, something remarkable happened just hours ago. A senior official inside the current administration resigned, the first to do so, citing this conflict directly as the reason. The man who held the position of director of the National Counterterrorism Center stepped down and released a public statement. In that statement, he said he could not in good conscience support the ongoing war. He argued that there was no imminent threat from Iran to justify the conflict. He said that a coordinated campaign of pressure and misleading information had created the belief inside Washington that this war could be won quickly and cleanly. He called it an echo chamber built to push America into a fight that did not serve American interests. Now the politics around this resignation have already exploded. People on every side are using it for their own purposes. But strip away the politics, and what remains is this: the man whose entire job was to track and counter terrorism threats at the national level, the person who should have been sitting in every planning meeting about the potential fallout of a war with Iran, was not part of the process. He was sidelined, and now he has walked out the door. That matters, not because one resignation ends a war. It does not, but because it raises a question that the American public deserves to ask honestly. How many people inside the decision-making structure have doubts that are not being voiced? And what does it mean for the long-term execution of this operation if the people with concerns are being pushed out rather than heard? The polls right now are telling a complicated story. Depending on the survey you look at, support for this conflict sits somewhere around or below 45% of the overall American population. That means this is an unpopular war by any historical standard at this early stage. And as the costs become clearer, as the duration stretches from weeks into months, and as the absence of allies becomes more visible, that number is unlikely to go up on its own. This is not a moment for easy answers. The Strait of Hormuz matters. The flow of oil matters. The stability of the global economy matters. And the threat from Iranian-backed groups to American interests and allies in the region is real. None of that is in question. What is in question is whether this conflict was entered with the strategy, the alliances, and the honest assessment of long-term costs that a commitment of this scale requires. That question is now being asked by generals, by diplomats, by allies, and by the American people, and the answers will define not just the outcome of this conflict, but the shape of American power for a generation. This is Kundi, reporting for Pulse America News. Stay with us, because this story is far from over. Both parts together deliver a fully rewritten, emotionally strong, engaging script well above 8,000 characters. No chapter headings, no original presenter names, no source channel names, fully branded for Pulse America News with your name Kundi throughout. Clean, copyright safe, YouTube policy compliant, and written to hold viewer attention from the opening hook to the final line.